Lesson 2, Trade Theory, from Mercantilism to Free Trade. Group 1. First reporter, Miss Berosa. Second reporter, Miss Ostero. Third reporter, Miss Bortanov. Fourth reporter, Miss Avila. And last reporter is Mr. Alcoran.
Good day everyone. For lesson 2, we have trade theory from mercantilism to free trade. First is we have comparative advantage, which is the concept that a certain good can be produced more efficiently than others due to the number of factors, including productive skills, climate, natural resource availability, and so forth. I'll give an example. We have two countries, country A and B. So, they produce both cars and trucks. For country A, they can produce 30 million of cars a year and 6 million of trucks a year. And then while country B can produce 35 million of cars a year and 21 million trucks a year. In this case, country B has the absolute advantage in producing both products, but it has comparative advantage in trucks because it is relatively better of producing them. Kasi, in country B, there are more, mas marami sila napuproduce in terms of the vehicles like cars and sa trucks kasi sila yung pinaka-max. And then, sa country B, advantage siya sa number of trucks. Kasi in country A, can only produce 6 million, while country B can produce 21 million sa trucks. So, mas more advantage yung country B. Next is we have opportunity cost. Opportunity cost represent the potential benefits an individual investor or business misses out on or when choosing an alternative over another. So, example, having a takeout for lunch occasionally can be a wise decision, especially if you need really yung stress ka na sa work and then you really need a break. So, better yon. Other example is when you buy a cheeseburger, halimbawa sa McDonald's, it worth 150 pesos. So, every day you buy cheeseburgers, continued as in every day for 10 years. So, you have the opportunity, yung nalolos na opportunity mo to be healthy na wala sa'yo. Aside pa sa healthier, yung money na spend mo every day dun sa 10 years, you total it. So, lagi natin, 10 years, a year is 365 times 10, that's 3,650. Multiply by 150, which is the worth of the cheeseburger, that's 547,500, mga around ganyan. So, imagine the money used, example sa opportunity cost. And then next, we have the competitive advantage. Competitive advantage is an attribute that enables a company to outperform its competitors, which allows a company to achieve superior margins compared to its competition and generates value for the company and its shareholders. So this competitive advantage, example, we have the top companies like the Surf or Ariel. Ano yung advantage and disadvantages nila in choosing, ano ba sa Surf? Makita siya, mabilis siya kasi nga for pangmasa. And then, whereas sa Ariel, parang yung mga high-end or mayayaman lang gumagamit, parang ganun. A and B. Sa company A, yung labor nila mas mura. Tapos, high-skilled yung workers, mura, high-skilled, and then yung raw materials na ginagamit nila is, mura din also. So, sa company B, madaming tao, kaso konti lang napuproduce kasi nga yung raw materials, we have the competitive advantage theory, which is a factor or attributes that allow a given company to produce more affordable or higher quality services or products than its competitors. This theory is from Michael Porter, which is sabi niya, if you have the cheap raw materials used, yung highly skilled labor, tapos access to new technology, yun yung tinatawag na competitive advantage theory.
Absolute advantage is when a producer produces a goods or services in a greater quantity for the same cost or same quantity at a lower cost than to the other producer. For example, for the absolute advantage, Japan and Italy can produce automobiles, but Italy can also produce sports car in a higher quantity at a faster rate with greater profit. Then Italy is said to be have an absolute advantage.
Let's move on to the balance of trade. When we say balance of trade, this is a difference between a country's exports and imports. So when we say exports, these are the domestically produced goods and services that are being sold abroad, while imports are purchase of foreign goods and services. So in a global economy, each country has a difficult accounting record of what it exports to all other countries and what it imports of these countries. So we can figure out the balance of trade if we just focus on separate countries' imports and exports. Identify the trade deficit and trade surplus. Example, if a country imports more goods and services than it imports, we can say that there was a trade deficit. Then, if the country exports more goods and services than imports, there was a trade surplus.
Good afternoon, everyone. So today I'm going to discuss to you about Hexter-Owen theory. Hexter-Owen theory explains about why countries trade goods and services with each other. But before anything else, let me explain to you first the two goods that may appear in trading between two countries. First is the labor-intensive goods. Labor-intensive goods, these are the goods that requires more labor but less in capital. Just for example, shoes or the textile products such as jeans. While the capital-intensive goods, these are the goods that requires more capital but less in labor. This, for example, the cars, computers, and cell phones. So let's go back to trade and Hexter-Owen theory. One condition of trade between two countries is that they differ for the availability of factors of production. So for example, one country is abundant in capital but less in labor, while another country is abundant in labor but less in capital. So in this situation, capital and labor are not available in the same proportion in two countries, and this leads to specialization according to Hexter-Owen theory. So the country with more capital specializes in the production of capital-intensive goods, which it exports in exchange for a labor-intensive goods, while the country with more labor specializes in the production of labor-intensive goods, which it exports in exchange for a capital-intensive goods from the other country. So this means that Hexter-Owen theory makes a country to export a product they are most suited to produce in exchange for a product they are less suited to produce. Let's take an example between two countries, the country A and the country B. Let's just say that country A is more on labor but less in capital. So country A specializes in the production of more pairs of jeans but less in cell phones, while country B, which is more on capital but less in labor, specializes in the production of more cell phones but less in a few pairs of jeans. So let's go back to the question, why countries trade goods and services? So this is because they do not have their own resources, or they cannot satisfy their own needs and wants in their own country, so they must perform trading. And as we can see, Hexter-Owen theory both appear the trading and specialization that can also lift up the economy.
So, good afternoon, Sir Ken. So, this afternoon, I was tasked to report about Porter's Diamond Model. So, what is Porter's Diamond Model? It is used by the businesses to analyze the external competitive and environment. For example, ano ang makakaya ng isang bansa laban sa mga bansa. For example, the Japan, they are they are very high in technology, but the other country, they are developing pa. So ano ang advantages ng isang bansa laban sa ibang bansa, or ano ang mga advantages ng isang business laban sa ibang business? So malalaman natin ito. So in this model, there are 4 major factors that determines the national competitive advantages of a specific nation. So these are the factor conditions, the demand conditions, the related and supporting industries, the firm strategy, structures, and rivalry. So these are the 4 major factors. And there are also 2 additional factors: the government policies and the chance. So what is factor conditions? For example, the German car industry. Let's look an example for factor condition on this. The one factor that exists to make the German car industry competitive is the reason that the existence of the specialist engineering establishment. So these establishments produce graduates with an specialism, obviously in the car industry. So next, the demand conditions. So they have the strong home demand for their car industry, and they have the autobahn. The autobahn is, they produce cars with no speed limits. So expecting that this car has a good performance level. So the perception of the consumers that the car that they produce is getting better, and third is the related and supporting industry. There are lots of related industry and suppliers within the Germany. For example, the information technology or the IT suppliers, such as the Siemens and SAP. By working with these firms, they will enhance their global competitive with this car industry further and furthermore. And finally, the firm strategy, the structure, and the rivalry. The rivalry between the Mercedes, the BMW, and the Volkswagen. So this firm, the competition between the attention of the consumers. So they are competing. Last is the government. The government supported and they invest infrastructure for they build new autobahn with no speed limits. So they supported for the innovation and the prosperity of the car engineering in the car industry. By satisfying all the determinants in the Porter's-Lehman model, German's car industry build as a sustainable for globally competitive, and by the help of their government shall make a reinforcement for the innovation and prosperity of their country.